gosh, oh my gosh. I am so excited.
Really,
I don't know about this one. I'm really excited. You are?
Mm-hmm.
This is your excited face? Oh my gosh.
That's my excited face.
We have a special guest today, my dear, dear friend, Amber McReynolds, who I met in Leadership Denver 2017.
Woo.
Best class ever. Amber is a leader. She is an author, and she is a TED Talk speaker, a TED speaker. Yeah. Not sure if I said that right.
Here's what matters. She has almost 2 million, if not 2 million views right now
on
of
her
TED
talk. And
she's an innovator. Is
passionate about voter equity and the voter experience for everyone, which I think we can all agree is a really important thing. And Amber has a lot of great knowledge about that. So welcome, Amber.
Yay.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. Would you share with the people that are not very familiar with who you are yet, because they will be, just kind of your background, what you do now, what you're passionate about, anything that you think is important for folks to know about you, Amber McReynolds.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. This is just very exciting for me to be on the podcast, especially with my friend Gail. So I'm just delighted to be here. So I've actually worked on improving the voting experience for all voters, every voter that's eligible in the United States, and also actually have done some international work. But I've worked on improving the process and improving the voting experience for my entire career, and that's now well over 2 decades. I am the former director of elections in the city and county of Denver, where I had to lead a significant turnaround of an office that was in pretty bad shape when I showed up, and we were able to turn it around and turn it into, arguably one of the best offices in the country and even the world, and won international and national recognition for a lot of the things we did on innovation and voting systems and voter outreach programs and all those things. So I deeply care about having an impact, having a positive impact on the world as it is now, and building the future, especially in the democracy front for my kids. And I'm a mom of an 11 and 13-year-old, and they've been a guiding light in a lot of the work that I do, and the advocacy and just the way that I show up to these issues that are so critically important for not only our democracy, but democracies around the world. So I'm going to continue to do everything I can to strengthen our democracy, strengthen our democratic institutions, strengthen the voting process for all voters, and continue to advocate for fairness and freedom within the process for voting.
Thank you for doing that heavy lifting and that work.
You are a saint.
Yes.
It is a huge task, and we appreciate it. I'm curious to know, since you brought it up, and we will include a link to it in the description as we go through and put it in our blog post when we post it. What is your TED Talk about? Is it about these issues, and kind of what do you go through, and what are you focused on in that?
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely about innovating the voting experience and putting voters first, and really centering the process around the voter. In our country, when we think back to when our Constitution was signed and inked, we created a system by and for and of the people. And the challenge with that, and I would say that's also evolved over time. When the country first started, women could not vote at all. They were absolutely left out of the process. There wasn't a woman in sight when the founding of our nation occurred. Then you look at the suffrage movement and the decades that took to convince men, who were the decision makers, that the households would still run, dinner would still be cooked, and the country would not fall apart if women could simply have a voice in the political process.
They don't look at me.
And you fast forward, and this was only in 1920 that finally the right to vote for women was codified. We also had the 14th Amendment, which expanded rights for for Black and all voters, really. Civil rights movement that came around in the 1960s further expanded rights for all citizens. And that's such a landmark and such an important piece of our history that I think often gets overlooked, both the 19th Amendment and the suffrage movement, and also the civil rights movement. And you fast forward to today, and you see that the United States is 75th in the world in women's representation. And so while we have made steps, they have not been strides. They've been small wins. And partly the system is just not designed for women, for candidates that are not that traditional candidate from back in the day when the country was founded. And part of that is because the system was designed a certain way and designed by the political parties, not designed to put voters first, not designed to really empower voters with choice and options and the ability to participate. And so we've got a lot of system and structural, issues. And that's when I talk about innovating and improving the voting experience, it really is around those system issues and kind of the structural issues that are the underbelly of our democracy in the United States. And when you could point to any issue, any policy issue, and you can see that largely certain people and certain groups are left out, and that's because of the lack of representation. And we look at Congress, it doesn't accurately reflect the population of the United States. There's only 2 states that are currently at parity, meaning they have 50% of women in their legislatures. The lowest state has about 9% women in the legislature. When you look at the policies and the decisions they're making at those legislative levels, it's not surprising because it's reflective of that gap. And I think it's one of the most critical democracy issues that we currently face is closing this gap and ensuring a fair and equal system for everyone.
I love that. Wow. I think that's one of the bigger concerns. You invited me to a luncheon not too long ago where I learned about an organization called Represent Women, which is really on the track to make some headway when it comes to gender parity, and specifically around women within politics, and the ability to be able to represent and lead and have support when it comes to their family lives and childcare and things like that. And that was a really powerful kind of eye opener for me. And when I think about both the experience that you had within the city of Denver and kind of turning around that office and the work that you did there with, I'm sure, a very capable and hopefully energetic team. And I know the work that you're involved in now and the various different teams and committees and work that you do. Bruce and our business is focused on building really high-performing teams and deepening business relationships from the perspective of like power skills, right? Greater emotional intelligence, greater empathy, greater ability to adapt in uncertainty and flex when times are ambiguous. In the experiences that you've had within the teams doing the work that you do, what has been for you an absolute must-have skill, must-have power skill that's needed to kind of affect change, to innovate, to be a strong, collaborative, and cohesive team? What do you think is kind of maybe floats to the top as that power skill that's needed?
Yeah, I think building what I would call a collaborative vision with the team. So when I first got hired in the Denver elections office, I was by far the youngest on the team by more than a decade, maybe more than that. And my ideas were shot down, daily, if not hourly, by the upper echelon, because they had no interest in change. They didn't realize there was a problem, really, any of it. And so my first experience in a large team environment like that, I knew what it felt like to be sidelined and to not have a voice and not not have anyone at the top or even my own manager listening, deep, thoughtful listening. And so I sort of learned what not to do for those first few years. And, and then I was involved in some different leadership programs. But what I really found when I started to build my team is, number one, I hired a number of people that were right out of college. I still am their mentor, and some of them today. Some of them have gone on to run other election offices. Some of them have gone on to run other organizations. And that's what I wanted, is I want to build people up to go have impact. That could be in the office that I'm in, or it could be elsewhere. But I deeply believe that we're not just building for the organization or the business that we have in front of us today, but we're really building leaders that can go be thoughtful and creative and continue to have impact. And so I call that, it's my description of it is sort of building this collective vision, which includes me deeply listening to their ideas, because they have way better ideas than I have. I know I have some good ideas, but I also know that they have great ideas. And what I found is, I'd kind of come up with an idea and they'd be like, oh yeah. And then they add a bunch of things to it and make it even better. Right. So I truly believe that creating a collective vision as part of a team, and involving deep listening and meaningful listening and thoughtful input processes are the best way to do, and certainly have proven to be the most successful, at least in everything I've done over time.
I love that so much, Amber. Actually, you really sparked something for me when you talked about the experience you had as a young male in an office that was probably heavily dominated by folks who had been there many, many years, very stuck in the way it's always been, kind of anti-change, which we are naturally. Our brains don't love that. And the fact that you have taken what you experienced in that time and made that part of how you want to develop a team that does not represent that is much more open and collaborative and collective. I really love that. That's pretty powerful. So.
I'm curious, Amber, just kind of thinking back to you in your younger years, and you really, what you've described, at least what I'm hearing, is a life of service, right? Mm-hmm. So you've entered in an area of kind of public good, and then you're focused on teams from a very supportive standpoint. What was the catalyst for that? What give me a sense into the brain of young Amber McReynolds? It's like, you know what? I want to change the world. That's my plan. I'm just going to change the world. Not a big deal. I'm just going to go do it.
Already doing it.
Yeah. So a couple things. I mean, I look back to growing up, and I had some really strong, civically minded, service minded people around me. So, my dad was a defense lawyer and served as public defender for a long time. And then he became a judge, and that's when I talk about fairness and justice and all, a lot of that came from what I watched my dad do every single day. In whether he was practicing law or serving as a public defender or going on to be a judge. My mom was a school teacher. She stayed home with us during the younger years and then went back. She created her own business, worked from, so she could do a design business while we were growing up at home. And then I had a great aunt who, still to this day is one of the smartest individuals from a political and civic perspective that I've ever listened to talk. And she was actually classmates with Ronald Reagan in their very tiny high school graduating class in Sterling, Illinois. And she was valedictorian of the class. So she was very studied, very smart. And she called him Ronnie, and she wrote him letters when he was president almost every week with her advice on what he should be doing.
Wow.
I love that.
And then I have two grandmothers that were both poll workers, and my mom would take us to visit them on election day, take, goods to them, cookies and different things for the election workers. And that, when I saw my grandmas talk about their service in that way, I'll never forget that. And so I think that what we show our kids is very much shapes how, what they're going to do later on. those positive attributes that I saw amongst all these women that, by the way, two of which were born prior to even women having the right to vote. But they all, my great aunt, my two grandmothers, they deeply cherished freedom and fairness and equality and participation and civics. And it was part of their being. It was part of what they talked about. It was a constant, and they so deeply cared because it wasn't that long prior that the right wasn't there. And so, I'm deeply driven by that experience, and a lot added on to that, a lot of great people I worked with and for during my college years. And, I think that there are so many people that have done extraordinary things and are doing extraordinary things that we really don't know the stories about. And, I think that this is a great example. I think we can see that with lots of the generations that came before us. They might not be Alice Paul as part of the suffrage movement that everybody knows, but they were part of the suffrage movement in these very direct and obvious ways of, women and grandmothers, and, building this deep passion for service and impact and care for our democracy, which I think is something that, it's a democracy if we can keep it. And that means we have to care for it. We have to nourish it. We have to innovate and create and continue to improve it over time.
I love that.
Thank you, Amber. That's great.
Awesome. So in thinking about this inspiration of these people around you, specifically quite a few female figures, and of course your dad as well, who were already very civic minded and contributing in many ways within their community. One of the things we like to ask is, what is kind of the best piece of advice that you've been given over your career? One that just sticks with you no matter what new project, what new job, what new experience that you have, almost kind of a mantra to live by, or something that you just keep very close to your heart, that you wouldn't mind sharing with us and others.
So it's have courage and be kind. My mother told me that growing up, and it's the motto I have with my children. And it's simple, but it applies broadly. I think that having the courage to lead, having the courage to do something new, having the courage to say no, really is all of that. And then just being kind in the way that we approach our work, each other, our interactions, our businesses, service. So have courage and be kind has stuck with me, and I've certainly passed it on to my children.
Love that.
Yeah, I've got to pass it through the generations. My dad, when I was a kid and then well into my professional years, used to have this story of going to I want to say a religious leader. There we go. I found it. A religious leader. And this was a person who meditated frequently and would go about and kind of live his life. And Dad said, "What's the secret of life?" And the guy was kind of stopped and took a while to answer it. And then he finally just said, "You can always be kind." And that was the way that my dad tried to live his life, and to try to pass it on to his three children, my brother and my sister and me, as we grew up. I don't know if it always worked. It's tough. Sometimes it's tough to be kind, which is the challenge, right? I think the the natural threat response can make us such that it makes us work harder to be kind, and yet that's when it's even more important. So I really appreciate that thought. The last question that we have for you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And I agree with you on the being kind, but I also think it means, so be kind to each other, but also be kind to ourselves. And if there's somebody that's deliberately hurting people or our systems or our democracy, then we need to be kind to ourselves and stand up for that, right? So I think it's the way I look at that motto, at least, is sort of doing the right thing, but also applying that be kind directly to ourselves and to our systems and to our structures that maybe need it.
Yeah, 100%. And in fact, I think, I'm in my 50s and I
am not.
Yes, you are. And one of the things that is really tough for me to swallow right now is just, I'm starting to say things like my parents and grandparents would say, like, oh, back in my day, it wasn't like that. And I think there's always been friction in politics, friction in religion, friction even in the way you parent. Those are topics that can be kind of difficult. And so I really appreciate you saying that, both the have courage and be kind piece, and say, specifically that you need to be thinking about yourself in that way. I really wish more people would take that to heart. I wish we were better able to have civil discourse and conversations about things and be more open to each other in all of that. And I'm still hoping for that. As an eternal optimist and idealist, I do hope for that. So let's see. So as we're kind of coming to a close, we usually end our video podcast with a question about what is making you giggle. What is making you happy? What
Excited,
is inspiring you? What are you looking forward to? And it's basically first thought, best thought. What is just popped into your head? And it's like, oh, it's this. This is feeding me right now.
Well, I have to say it's actually, so I moved to a new house last summer, and it's been about 8 or 9 years since I planted garden stuff, because it hasn't been the right time, and I've had a lot of trouble. So I've got this whole tomato project along with squash and cucumbers and lots of things going on. So it's just not something I've done for 8 or 9 years, kind of done and spent a lot of time outside. And so I'm just really proud. I got these even special planters, and I've been learning all these different organic ways to fertilize. And there's just something deeply calming about growing, and I've been teaching the kids, and I'm like, look, we can grow all of our vegetables for this year. And, we have strawberries and we have all these things, right? So I'm, that is giving me a lot of joy right now.
Well, if you end up with an overabundance of any of those things,
right over here,
we're happy to take them off. We love vegetables. We
take them.
Love some fruits. I'm ambivalent about a lot of fruits, and we'll figure it out. That's what I would say.
Oh my goodness, I'm sending you all sorts of great energy and green thumbs.
Yes.
Hopefully
every green thumb, all green fingers, It doesn't.
Hopefully it works.
Oh, I am so excited. Thank you, Amber. I know it's a quick hit and talk about a lot of things, and you are someone who genuinely inspires me. Your energy, your enthusiasm, your passion for voting equity and the voter experience and improving upon that and sharing that with others is absolutely palpable, and you are an inspiration to me for sure. We didn't even really get to talk about your book. Would you just show it for us?
Oh yeah,
and then
there's a book by Amber McReynolds.
We're gonna talk about
because she doesn't have enough time.
When
apparently.
Women Vote. Oh yes.
Yeah, this is the first one, so we have a second one coming out at the end of this year.
And can you
reveal the title?
Spice the title a little bit to us?
We're actually down to 2 titles, so we haven't fully decided. So I can't.
You can't share.
Well, we'll have you back on when the next book comes out.
Yes, we would love to do that.
Maybe you and your co-author, and we'll kind of do a little book launch podcast thing, and we will talk about the book and how to access the book for folks. And just thank you, Amber. I know how busy you are. It means a great deal that you would take some time and spend it with Bruce and me today.
And we hope you plant everything you possibly can.
I hope you grow things.
It's going to come up and it's going to be delicious and awesome.
And eat them.
I hope so. All right. Thank you so much. You guys are the best. Thank you.
All right. Take care.